the title of this is Navigating Naviance. But just because names can be confusing, Naviance is the company that runs this website, but the section that you can see on the top of your sheet, the section that you will be dealing with as a family is the part of Naviance called Family Connection. All right? And this thing is, as I said, at Pine Lake Prep, they're going to be buying this thing, I believe, next year, so you'll start to have the full benefits of it. But this part, wherever you see Naviance, and it's sort of like a purple theme, this is the back end of it where the counselors work. And it's been a godsend for counselors because it's this great database where we can keep track of all of our kids. We can load their test scores in here, load their GPAs in here. We can, I'll show you how we correspond with families this way. Whenever we have like a mass email to send out, we can very easily click students and parents, grade 12, give a message, or grade 10, or all three, and really quick way for us to communicate with parents, so it's really, really good for that. But the best part is clearly how we deal with our students. And we will be, occasionally, because it works best when you look at actual kids, I'll be bringing you to a couple of actual kids. We'll have sort of a gentleman's confidentiality agreement. If you see somebody you know and their GPA, don't go home and say, hey, guess what? I saw your kid has a 1.2. But what I've done is I've set up this fake, we're the Chargers, so I created this fake student called Mary Charger. So here's sort of, again, we're still in our end of it, Mary Charger, and we keep all of her scores in here. I made up these PSAT and SAT and ACT and subject test scores and AP scores for this kid, so these will all go into any sort of information about her. When we first meet with Mary, we start with, I'll show you my daughter with sort of live applications, but when we're starting with students, we've had a meeting with them, and we've asked both you as parents and the students about initial preferences, whether it's bigger picture things like public versus private, in-state, does your son or daughter want to stay within driving distance of home, or sort of, let's look at the whole country. What does she want to study? Is this a potential engineering kid? Is this a kid who's really undecided, which is fine at this point? Big versus small, et cetera, et cetera. The kid who lives in North Carolina and says, I just don't want to be cold. Okay, well, let's look at the Mason-Dixon line and south. And one of the first places we go is this prospective colleges area. And actually, I wanted to skip over to, so again, here's our end, but you have more interest over here. When you go in, or your son or daughter goes in, it's going to look like this. The sheet I gave you is our initial sort of introduction to the website for parents and students. And one of the reasons I handed this out is to show you that this is it as far as paper introduction for you all, because the website itself is really, really intuitive. We don't need to give you a booklet for you to be able to navigate this thing. In fact, what we use this white space in here, and probably the biggest hurdle we have to get over, is just giving everybody access codes so they can get in the site, so they're just looking at their kids' data. You notice back here, I am, of course, looking at, a lot of kids on it. I'm looking at every single student I have and can get to all of their grades and scores. But if we're dealing with your section, you are just going to be looking, if your daughter was Mary Charger, you're just going to be looking at Mary's information, of course. So, first thing we do with the kids is, actually, I'm going to show you my daughter's first because it's a little bit more complete. And we do this with both kids and parents. So here's my daughter. She's a senior, and this was my oldest. And even though I do this for a living, and as I tell people, I sort of, I've read the rules on the back of the box. It was still, tough. I mean, I knew the process, but I mean, sort of the emotions that get into it. Even though I've done this with thousands of kids, it's very different when you do it with your own daughter. Luckily, we have another counselor in the office, so I didn't have to be her counselor. I got to be her parent, but it was still rough stuff. Anyways, first thing we do is when the kids have to log on, we sort of make them create their account in order to have their first meeting with us. And a lot of schools get this started in sophomore year. So with Pine Lake, I would assume that either sophomore year or junior year, you'd be getting your access codes and getting in here. The kid has to sign in before she has her first meeting with us, and then they'll probably have it set up where you have to log in and do a couple of tasks before you have your first meeting, just as incentive to make sure we capture everybody. But we start with this thing, and Pine Lake will do the same, with a junior questionnaire. This is really our first kind of detailed work that we do with the kids. And as you see from our instructions, the answers to these questions, we ask them a bunch of questions, 37 questions, and every school is going to have slightly different questions, the amount of information they want, how they ask their questions. But a lot of it will be sort of name, rank, and serial number, parents' names, et cetera, et cetera. Then we get into bigger questions. What jobs have you held? What do you do to relax? What do you consider your greatest strengths and talents? Talk about academic strengths. Talk about specific moments, interesting moments in your life. Brag a little bit, biggest disappointment. Then, of course, at the end, this kind of kicks off the college talk. What schools are you interested in? And then things like, as I was just saying, big versus small, what part of the country, do you know what you want to study, et cetera, et cetera. From that, and then you do the same thing. We have a parent questionnaire that's shorter, but you can give all of this information. From that, we start the college list. So we're in the About Me tab there. And now we move over to the Colleges tab. This is probably the area of the site, once it gets rolling, that you will spend your most time with, working with the college list. And during possibly as early as sophomore year, but probably more junior year, you and your child and your counselor together will start working on this colleges I'm thinking about list. And, actually, let's go back to Mary Charger, because she's got a more interesting list. The Sarah knows. Okay, so here's back to our fictional Mary Charger student. And she's answered all those questions. And sometimes the student who is on the ball goes in there first and starts with all these things. Sometimes it's the parent who is kind of driving the bus a little bit more. Sometimes it's the counselor. But as you can see from who added these schools on here, the parent hasn't been on yet to throw in his or her suggestions. But again, this is happening probably anywhere from November of junior year on, where we're just kind of amassing possibilities. One of the things that we certainly advocate, and I'm sure your counselors will do the same thing, early in the process, let's think of all possibilities. All right. Now, if we have, if you and your family have very specific thoughts about staying relatively close by, or if your son or daughter has a very, very specific major, they just want to study, marine biology in the Southeast, there's not going to be a heck of a lot of possibilities. That can kind of, shrink the list. But if you look up you can compare specific colleges. This is again based on your kid, so I can say, let's compare American to App State to Auburn to Boston College. Do up to 10 at a time. And these will show, again, for Mary, how are her GPAs and SATs doing compared to all these schools? You see the ones in green are saying go. She's got a GPA of 4.1, and our average kids who are getting in, for American is 3.77, App State 3.42, Auburn 3.41. BC is the only red one in there. Same thing with the SAT scores. Right? And sorry, I'm moving quick because I just want to show you a couple other things. We have the same kind of, you can do things with careers. In fact, I'm going to show you my daughters. We have a Myers-Briggs interest inventory right here, where kids talk about their likes and dislikes. 50 questions or so that sort of describe kids, okay, which kid is more like you, and you eventually get to something that looks like this. So my daughter filled it out, and it gave her this neat sort of personality. It describes, based on her answers, the kind of person that she is. And the kids are always kind of fascinated. Like, wow, it nailed me. It's exactly what I do. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And then here's really cool. Fields of study that they may be interested in. You know, so she is very, very interested in the arts. And then it breaks down, okay, what does that mean? Like, what are the jobs I could do because of my interest in the arts? Here we have, looks like medicine. I don't know exactly, sorry. Okay, she's very interested in the health services. I'm going to move down. But I scrolled all the way down. Computer science is not very interested at all. Okay? And knowing my daughter, probably engineering is the last thing. It would be like, you know, never in a million years. What else can we do?
So a lot of these surveys and all that stuff, do you have to be in your school portal to get to it, or just through the website can you do it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll be on the school portal. The stuff you can get to just look at ours will be all those scattergrams, basic information. You can do those college search pieces on here, that super match that I just showed you. One thing I did want to just quick show you. Notice how I've been showing you the student portal the whole time. But we also have ours, my wife and I, and you could just do one together. My wife and I happen to set up different ones. And so this shows, and I happen to be sending to myself because I'm a senior parent, but if I didn't get the email in my regular inbox, it shows the emails that I've sent out recently. There's an online test prep program. That was an extra piece we added, but your school may very well add that. That's a nice piece that they can do. We answered the parent questionnaire. As you can see, it's a lot shorter than the student one. Probably 10 questions or so. All right. I had strengths for her. I was being a wise guy. And her weakness was she's a terrible parker. That was why we were trying to, get the darn license, which was tougher than getting into college, I think. So I feel like I've only even kind of given you just a taste. Lots and lots of good stuff on here that, again, Lucy was saying, you guys are going to be on here. And as I said, we give you so little on here because a lot of this is very intuitive. I mean, you just start picking and choosing different areas. Some will, you have all your student scores on here. And then we were working with one last thing, and is this still Sarah's? Yeah. we were working with the colleges that you were thinking about, but you can actually look at, for instance, this will be super helpful to you when she's a senior. You will see, actually, I'll show you this. When she's a senior, you don't go to the colleges I'm thinking about, it's colleges I'm applying to. So this girl, Abby Greenfield, she put her, this is a separate screen where she actually, these are the schools I'm applying to. We've taken that big list of suggestions, and now senior year, this is how she tells us, send my transcripts and recommendations in. So she literally adds it on, and then you as parents can see the progress of things. This shows you, okay, my school has sent in her material, so that's covered, all right? And we send them in electronically, and we even get codes back from the college saying, yes, we have it, you know, we've uploaded it. You can see what's happened with her, you know, whether she was accepted or denied. This unknown actually means she was either deferred or waitlisted. And you have the same options over here about sending.
Session 1 should end at this time. Session 2 will start.
So hopefully that was helpful. I feel like, you know, there's more to it. And, but as parents of freshmen, it's sometimes good to just sort of get your mind around the whole piece, you know. You know, I might be interested in going into business, but I also really like studying English and history, and I think I probably want to be within driving distance, but I'd love to know what New England has to offer, because I have grandparents who live up there, and that'd be fun to check that out. And as far as price, you know, we're not, you know, my parents can't afford anything, but I know that there's schools out there that have good financial aid programs. I know that there's good scholarship programs, and this program can help you with that too, so they're fairly open.
So this colleges database, is this a pulling from a national database?
Which one?
All the information on all the colleges.
Yes. Well, it's pulling from two places. For instance, this list. Let's look at it. Let's look at American University up in DC. We've created this list that you all have access to, and we'll get back to it and show the other information that's on here. But let's say your counselor has thrown, or your counselor's thrown out Boston College. And you've heard of Boston College. You know it's got played in the ACC. You may be, you know somebody who's gone. We don't know a heck of a lot about Boston College. Let's learn more. Click on Boston College. You will have information coming from your high school. All right. For instance, at Boston College, over the last few years, the average, and we're talking about inflated GPAs, the average kid getting accepted at Boston College was a 4.27. The average SAT score getting accepted to Boston College was a 1455, and that's out of 1,600, so that's just the first two sections of the SAT. And notice how compared to poor little Mary Charger, who has a 4.1 at Providence Day, and 1220 so far in her SAT, these numbers are showing up in red. That doesn't mean she can't go there, but it's just saying that the numbers are a little bit lower. If we go here, now let's go look on, I want to get to, we also have general Boston College data, not just Providence Day-based college data. There we go. So here we're getting, this is not based on your particular school, but on Boston College in general. How many kids applied, what percent were accepted, how many are enrolled there, or of this particular freshman. So just in the last freshman class, it's telling you that almost 33,000 applied, 9,200 were accepted, Of those accepted, 2,200 elected to go, so a 28% acceptance rate. These are their numbers from across the country of highs and lows and average for SAT and ACT scores, things like that. You can also go straight to, we go back to this original page. On any one of these, you just click this little icon and go straight to the school's website. So I just hit the University of Georgia, and that will go to the UGA website so you can explore it that way. All right. A couple other little things over here. This is really helpful, both early, middle, and late in the process, that you don't have to search through books or through the website for an email contact with admissions. If you or your student had a quick question for High Point, it's going right to High Point admissions. Really easy. Here though, and so notice the other things here. This tells you, one, how your student is going to apply when it is time. All of these except electronic applications, which is basically the rule now. Even 10 years ago, it was probably 2% of all applications were being sent in, online. Now it's the opposite. Now it's 98%. In fact, more and more, colleges not even accepting paper applications at all. In fact, starting with next year, the Common Application, which is the application that serves now about 500 schools. In fact, most private schools that you know of, certainly selective ones, and more public schools are all in this thing called the Common Application. Well, as of next year, the Common Application has no more paper application. It doesn't exist. You have to apply online. So all of these show you this is online applications. If it says CA, I don't know if you can see that back there, with a little red CA, that means it's a Common Application school. So our private schools on there in general, American and BC and Cornell and Furman and Richmond and Vanderbilt, Villanova, all Common App. Here we have, notice Chapel Hill, even though it's public, that is on the Common App. Ohio State just joined the Common App. University of Tennessee joined the Common App. So more and more publics are doing it. But this is more for senior year when it's, all right, how's my kid going to apply? This column obviously tells you who put this school on the list. You know, and actually, I did this one fake, but clearly a list that is too counselor-driven, unless the counselor just happened to be the one who put it on there after a discussion with the family, probably isn't good. It's obviously going to be a much more a list much more focused to the actual family if we have the student, if we have the parent putting schools on here. Maybe the parent hasn't put schools on there because the parent checked and said, yeah, all the schools that I'm interested in are already on there, so didn't find the need to do that. Next, this is from the counselor, expected difficulty. And Family Connection actually gives 5 categories that the counselor can rate these schools based on your kid. Their opinion, so again, more art than science probably, but their opinion based on the SAT and GPA and the activities that the kid is in, and maybe, you know, if this kid's going to be the starting point guard at Chapel Hill, even if their grades aren't that good, they might put it in as likely. But I usually will base my things on the academic side, especially when there's, you know, if there's great athletic or arts talent. I figure the coaches know better than I do. Sorry. Well, we rated these schools, the counselor has. There's actually 5 categories. I usually use 3. The 3 in the middle. The ones that I think the student's going to get into, I'll put likely. And those aren't, of course, guarantees, but I certainly work this way, and most counselors, I'm sure, do. If we're going to make a mistake, we're going to make it on the conservative side. It doesn't do anybody any good to to, in the junior year, be just wildly enthusiastic about your students' chances at, Chapel Hill or whatever school we're talking about, if it's really much more iffy than that. So when I put likely on a school, it means, unless something strange happens, this kid's getting in. All right? Possible is a pretty big category. Possible is going to be, maybe anywhere from the 30% possibility to the 75% possibility. This really could happen for the student, but you still need a couple more likelies on that list to make sure that it does happen. And then the reaches, they certainly don't mean out of reach, but of course they could. I mean, we don't ever tell a student, don't apply there, you're not going to get in there. We are surprised every year, and it would be, I think, kind of damaging to the kids. Maybe, we're honest, but we're not in the business of crushing dreams before they even have a chance to make an attempt. And we have kids, certainly, and families and parents who feel, yes, I know that Georgetown is a long shot for my student, but wow, you get to go through this process once, why not give it a try? There are some really outstanding qualities that this student brings to the table that could absolutely work in certain situations. And two, we're talking about a kid in junior year. We probably don't even have SAT scores yet. Maybe these might be based on PSAT scores. So the kid, hauls off and gets 750s and 780s on everything, could absolutely change the category. The student has also given, this is optional, but it helps the counselor and the parents certainly, given how interested they are in the school. You can see that University of Richmond up in Virginia is the student's first choice at this time. Others they have varying degrees of interest in. When we've got the different due dates. And then over to these icons, I showed you the contact and the website, but probably the most either helpful, scary, or controversial one is, these are called the scattergrams. And these are based not on national results from these schools, but on your particular school's results at these institutions. So, notice how with Clemson, I called it likely for Mary, and hopefully you'll be able to see all the different points here, but if I hit the scattergram, this is going to show all of the results at our schools. So this is Providence Day, 2009 to 2013. Every single kid who has applied to Clemson put on a graph showing SAT scores down here. Now this is just the first two sections of the SAT, the critical reading and the math. The Providence Day GPA over here. All these X's are kids who didn't get accepted. The diamonds, whether blue or green, are kids who are deferred or waitlisted. All right? Deferred means if you apply in their early deadline, and they don't say no, but they say not yet. They just bump you to the regular deadline. If it's a diamond and it's green, that means they were deferred and then eventually accepted. If it's a blue diamond, that means they were deferred and either eventually didn't get accepted or just decided not to pursue it. Let's say they got deferred at Clemson, but they got into South Carolina, and that's really where they wanted to go anyways, so they didn't even bother following up with Clemson. So it could be one of those two. And of course, the green blocks are, they got in. Here, since we're on the kid's page, we've put Mary, even though we're still in this is a potential college for her to apply to, we're put a red circle for Mary over there based on her SAT and GPA score, and that's why we've called it likely. There is not a kid in this whole area who didn't get in with numbers like hers. And so, in Clemson's a good one to pull up, and you'll see the ridiculous number of results we have for Chapel Hill, because that's always going to be for our school certainly the most popular place to go. Huge numbers applying. Notice how, though, everything kind of moved up and to the right compared to Clemson. You can just see visually how Chapel Hill is a little bit more competitive, or significantly more competitive than Clemson is. And that's, again, for our kids, and that's important. We're not talking about a resident of South Carolina. We're talking about a resident of North Carolina. Clearly, if we did the Chapel Hill chart for a student in another part of the country, these things would be even worse. I mean, worse from the parents' perspective, where all the greens would be up in here almost exclusively, because to get into Chapel Hill, as you probably know from out of state, is ridiculous. For us, it's just pretty darn tough.
Well, what are the two lines? So you got 4.3 over there, and then just over 1,400.
This is the average accepted GPA from our school. So if you look at, if you average all of the green blocks, they average to a 4.3, and the average of the SATs for the green blocks is a 1408. All right, so pretty high around now. But that's not saying you need a 1408 to get in, because these kids here. Let's not look at the outliers, because who knows, that could be an athlete, that could be a kid with bringing some kind of diversity to the table, could be somebody with, with connections, who knows. But here's a pretty good, actually over here, let's go. Pretty good swath of kids getting in this area, and notice how their SAT scores, are really closer to 1,200. So if you are 1,200, but you got a really good GPA, it's up around 4.3, you're in pretty good shape. You see one wait list up there into the 1,200, 4.3 area. So that 1408, and I would say the 4.3 can be a little bit misleading, because of course getting averaged in are all these geniuses out here. They're throwing our curve off, so it's not like you need those numbers to get in, that just happens to be the average. All right? And we still have, you can still see Mary right there. It's a little bit more iffy for her, as you can see from Chapel Hill, but this is looking still pretty good for her. Now, again, I made her up, but if you were looking at your kid's scattergram, let's say you work on a system like a timeline like ours, where this this initial list is being put out there for you to see, let's say February of junior year. This might be her GPA, or this might be her SAT only after one taking of the SAT. It might even be in there just based on the PSAT. Well, she's got more tests to take. The kids are going to have their, not all the time, but I would say 8 or 9 times out of 10, the best SAT scores are going to come fall of senior year. We have them take them, and I'm sure your kids will take them spring of junior year. And they may get some very good scores then. They may even have such high scores that they're like, that's high enough, I'm good. But generally, these kids get better with age. Even if they do test prep younger, some kids will do test prep maybe summer before junior year. Some will do it in the winter of junior year. They're still doing their best on these things fall of senior year. So, and that's a message for you too as a freshman. Don't overreact to stuff early in the testing cycle. You will get stronger. So anyways, if you're looking at this for Mary when it's the middle of junior year, know that probably this circle's going to move over, because our tests are going to come up. All right? And her GPA will probably rise too, because you were mentioning weighted classes. At least with our kids, and I think pretty much everywhere, it's in the junior and senior year that they're taking more APs and more honors classes, so that's when the weight really starts to take off. Freshman grades, at least at our school, freshmen don't take any APs. They might take one honors class. So it's kind of an unweighted grade in a way. But once that weight starts to kick in, that's where the 3.7s become 4.2s very, very quickly. So hers can change. And of course, if we're going to get into highly competitive schools, why is Georgetown called a reach for Mary? Well, that's why. Because she's hanging around with the wait list. There is an accepted kid right there, and that's the other thing. one, you're seeing from this a smaller sample size, so it's a little less predictable. And that was a nice thing about both Clemson and Chapel Hill. We have so many applicants that you really start to see the band, and you can really identify, where a kid fits. But with Georgetown and other private schools, one, fewer kids are applying, but also this starts to let you see, and maybe BC will be even better at that. Let me see the BC one. Oops. Yeah, sort of. Notice how there isn't as clear of a gray area. We got kids down here getting in and over here getting in, but somebody that strong, look at that kid, 4.6, and what's that? Close to 1,400 who got waitlisted or deferred and didn't eventually get in. So when you start to see the variation of decisions, that tells you, oh, okay, now we're dealing with a smaller private school. Numbers are important, but numbers aren't everything. Now we've got kids with maybe these kids are have written fantastic essays and have great recommendations. Maybe these kids have unbelievable extracurricular involvement that is really helping them out. And by the flip side, maybe these kids don't. They obviously are geniuses on the standardized tests, all 1,500 and over, but the GPAs weren't that great. This kid's got both good SATs and high GPAs, but maybe isn't really bringing much else to the table. So the scattergrams can be really, really valuable. They can also be a little bit scary, but they are, I think, pretty good because they can be a dose of reality. And again, we use them in our office not to either dissuade or persuade kids to apply to certain schools, but just make sure everybody's kind of entering it with eyes wide open. With Pine Lake next year, if you're bringing this program in, obviously you're not going to have as many years of data for Pine Lake specifically. And hopefully they'll have a way, because you can load stuff in from an Excel spreadsheet, hopefully they'll be able to take maybe this graduating class and the previous one, at least 2 classes, and load them into their system so you'll be able to have a little bit of an idea of what else is in there. All right, so let's look at some other stuff. And then,
Excuse me.
Yes.
Does it only show you from a particular school that was applying to those colleges that got in, or can it show you from other schools that?
No, only from your school.
Okay.
Now, but you can go in, like I have, one of the reasons I gave you this sheet is you see the web address there. And our families have that web address, then they have their code to get into their kid. All right? But you can go into our site and enter as guest. And I have left all of the scattergram information up. It won't obviously put a circle in there for where your kid is, because but you'll be looking at all of that,
Right.
just without the circle. I suspect that we let people see more than most do on the guest one. I bet if you go into, I don't know, Myers Parks or Charlie Country Days or somebody else, they probably have those things blocked. But I see no reason why, one, it's if we have, we tell prospective families to check it out, and we're proud of our results, so it's a little bit of a marketing tool, but also if it's helpful for people just to kind of get a sense of where our kids are going or how tough it is to get into certain schools, I'm all in favor of it.
So you can get into all high schools as a guest through this application on there?
Yeah, but some, I mean, like I have to, I create, you probably don't want to see this, but I have sort of the back end control of the website, and so I can click on or off what a guest can see. And I haven't really checked it out, but I have a feeling that most schools give you relatively little in the guest side. But ours, we give you a fairly good amount. Go over to, I won't spend too much time. Oops, take a long time. We're not on sign and look at that. We're going to just show you a couple other things that you can do here. Let's see, sorry, I'm going to go to, okay. All right, so we're back on this home page, and notice how I was in the college section looking specifically. Well, this was, if you already kind of knew, you know, your counselor's throwing out names, you've got some names in your mind, your kid has some names. What if you don't have any names? You're kind of clueless about the whole thing. You can go into this great program called, this is a college search, where you can pick things like, okay, location, I want to, this is a very important category for me, location. I want to be in the southeast, and it's starting to show me some schools. Well, I'm not so interested in those schools, so let me have a different, let me get a little bit more specific. Augusta State, haven't even heard of it, maybe it's not that good of a school, maybe I'll let them know what my SAT scores are. I actually have 600 on every section, so here are my SAT scores. Let's say they're around 1770. Things have, that's very important. Now we're starting to, sorry, it's probably not as clear as it should be. Oh, I wanted to do the, sorry, this is not very helpful. Anyways, I'm probably making it more confusing than it needs to be. But you can go down that left side and pick location. You can pick 2-year versus 4-year. How much am I willing to pay? What is my student's SAT score or anticipated SAT score? What majors do they want to study? You know, as you saw, what states do they want to be in? What extracurricular activities are important to them? And it will give you every school that might possibly fit your kid. You can also go, okay, well here's one. All of the schools that you put in there, it said students who applied to these schools also applied to these schools. All right, you know, it's kind of like Amazon. You know, you order a book. Oh, people who liked Moneyball may also enjoy. So people who apply to Boston College also apply to these schools. People who apply to Clemson also apply to these schools. So this is a good sort of idea generator, if you want. That's all on here. Look up specific. You can compare specific colleges. This is again based on your kid, so I can say, let's compare American to App State to Auburn to Boston College. Do up to 10 at a time. And these will show, again, for Mary, how are her GPAs and SATs doing compared to all these schools? You see the ones in green are saying go. She's got a GPA of 4.1, and our average kids who are getting in, for American is 3.77, App State 3.42, Auburn 3.41. BC is the only red one in there. Same thing with the SAT scores. Right? And sorry, I'm moving quick because I just want to show you a couple other things. We have the same kind of, you can do things with careers. In fact, I'm going to show you my daughters. We have a Myers-Briggs interest inventory right here. where kids talk about their likes and dislikes. 50 questions or so that sort of describe kids, okay, which kid is more like you? And you eventually get to something that looks like this. So my daughter filled it out, and it gave her this neat sort of personality. It describes, based on her answers, the kind of person that she is, and the kids are always kind of fascinated, like, wow, it nailed me, it's exactly what I do. What are your strengths, what are your weaknesses? And then here's really cool, fields of study that they may be interested in. You know, so she is very, very interested in the arts, and then it breaks down. Okay, what does that mean? Like, what are the jobs I could do because of my interest in the arts? Here we have, looks like medicine. I don't know exactly. Sorry. Okay, she's very interested in the health services. I'm going to move down. But I scrolled all the way down. Computer science is not very interested at all. Okay? And knowing my daughter, probably engineering is the last thing. It would be like, you know, never in a million years. What else can we do?
So a lot of these surveys and all that stuff is, do you have to be in your school portal to get to it, or just through the
Yes.
website can you do it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll be on the school portal. The stuff you can get to just look at ours will be all those scattergrams, basic information. You can do those college search pieces on here, that super match that I just showed you. One thing I did want to just quick show you. Notice how I've been showing you the student portal the whole time, but we also have ours, my wife and I, and you could just do one together. My wife and I happen to set up different ones. And so this shows, and I have to be sending to myself because I'm a senior parent, but if I didn't get the email in my regular inbox, it shows the emails that I've sent out recently. There's an online test prep program. That was an extra piece we added, but your school may very well add that. That's a nice piece that they can do. We answered the parent questionnaire. As you can see, it's a lot shorter than the student one. Probably 10 questions or so. All right. I had strengths for her. I was being a wise guy, and her weakness was she's a terrible parker. That was why we were trying to, you know, get the darn license, which was tougher than getting into college, I think. And yeah, so I feel like I've only even kind of given you just a taste. Lots and lots of good stuff on here that, again, Lucy was saying, you guys are going to be on here. And as I said, we give you so little on here because a lot of this is very intuitive. I mean, you just start picking and choosing different areas. Some will, you have all your student scores on here. And then we were working with one last thing, and is this still Sarah's? Yeah. We were working with the colleges that you were thinking about, but you can actually look at, for instance, this will be super helpful to you when she's a senior. You will see, actually, I'll show you. When she's a senior, you don't go to the colleges I'm thinking about, it's colleges I'm applying to. So this girl, Abby Greenfield, she put her, this is a separate screen where she actually, these are the schools I'm applying to. We've taken that big list of suggestions, and now senior year, this is how she tells us, send my transcripts and recommendations in. So she literally adds it on, and then you as parents can see the progress of things. This shows you, okay, my school has sent in her materials, so that's covered, all right? And we send them in electronically, and we even get codes back from the colleges saying, yes, we have it, you know, we've uploaded it. You can see what's happened with her, you know, whether she was accepted or denied. This unknown actually means she was either deferred or waitlisted. And you have the same options over here about
Session 1
sending.
should end at this time. Session 2 will
Okay.
start.
So hopefully that was helpful. I feel like,
Yeah.
you know, there's more to it. And, but as parents of freshmen, it's sometimes good to just sort of get your mind around
Until
the whole piece, you know.